Everyone ignored the sheikh, but a waitress translates what he said in Arabic and discovers something incredible. Comment telling me what you thought of this story with a rating from 0 to 10 and comment what city you're watching me from. I really want to know if you like my story and I want to get to know you better, so subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. Thursday arrived at the restaurant Jasmine, carrying with it the familiar scent of spices and the soft murmur of conversations that echoed through the elegantly arranged tables in Beverly Hills. Emily Hayes adjusted the black apron over her simple dress and took a deep breath, preparing for another night of work. At 26, she had learned to turn each shift into a small performance, where her self-taught education and her passion for languages were hidden behind professional smiles and carefully balanced trays. The dining room was busier than usual, filled with businessmen in expensive suits and women adorned with jewels that glittered under the golden light of the chandeliers. Emily moved between the tables with the grace of someone who had learned to navigate worlds that did not belong to her, carrying plates that cost more than her weekly salary to people who barely noticed her existence. It was a familiar dance, a choreography of invisibility that she had mastered perfectly. Robert Miller watched her every move from the bar, his dark eyes following her with an intensity that made her skin crawl even when she tried to ignore it. The 32-year-old manager had twisted his admiration for Emily into something darker and more possessive over the 3 years she had worked there. He arranged the shifts so she was always under his watchful eye, creating situations where he could get closer, casually touch her arm, and whisper instructions far too close to her ear. That night, when the restaurant doors opened to welcome another customer, something in the air changed. Hakeem al-Rashid entered with a presence that seemed to alter the very atmosphere of the room. Tall, with broad shoulders that perfectly filled his navy blue blazer, he possessed a natural elegance that transcended expensive clothes or accessories. His grey-green eyes scanned the room with a calculated observation, like someone accustomed to assessing territories before conquering them. The maitre d' led him to a corner table, a discreet location that Hakeem seemed to approve of with a silent nod. As he settled in, he removed his expensive wristwatch and placed it on the table, a gesture that revealed strong wrists and hands that had never known manual labor. Robert, from his observation post, frowned upon noticing the impeccable quality of the newcomer's clothes, but soon shifted his attention back to Emily, who was approaching the table with the menu. It was when Hakeem began to speak to himself, in a low voice, that the course of the night changed forever. The words flowed in classical Arabic, filled with a poetic melancholy that echoed across the empty table. Ya tura, hal sa'ajidu yawman man yuhibbuni lidati laysa lima amliku. I wonder, will I ever find someone who loves me for who I am, not for what I possess? Emily, who was approaching to offer the menu, felt her heart race as she understood every word. Years of self-study, entire nights hunched over books found in second-hand shops, moments stolen between shifts to practice her pronunciation in front of the restaurant's bathroom mirror, all culminated in this instant of recognition. She stopped a few steps from the table, fighting the urge to reveal her understanding. Hakeem continued, oblivious to her presence. Kulu man hawli yarana fakat taj al-malik, laysa ar-rajul alathi yahtaju ila al-hubb al-haqiqi. Everyone around me sees only the king's crown, not the man who needs true love. His words carried a vulnerability that contrasted sharply with his imposing appearance, revealing layers of loneliness that his position of power could not disguise. When Emily finally approached the table, Hakeem looked up and studied her with renewed attention. There was something in her posture, a quiet intelligence that shone in her dark eyes, that intrigued him immediately. On an impulse, without thinking of the consequences, he murmured, "Ma ajmal Hada al-hududu al-sakin alathi tuhmiluhu. What a serene beauty you carry. To his absolute surprise, Emily replied in fluent Arabic, her pronunciation revealing years of dedication. Shukran laka, anta lutif jiddan. Thank you. You are very kind. The color rose to her cheeks, but she held his gaze firmly, waiting for his reaction. The silence that followed was electric. Hakim felt as if the world had stopped around him, his sharpened senses capturing every detail of that impossible moment. An American waitress who spoke perfect, classical Arabic was not something his worldwide experience had prepared him to encounter. He leaned forward slightly, his green eyes fixed on hers. Anti tatahadathina al-Arabiya? You speak Arabic. The question came out laden with disbelief and fascination. Na'am darast lugatakum li anni uhibu thaqafatakum kathiran. Yes, I studied your language because I love your culture very much, Emily replied, her voice gaining confidence with each word spoken. There was a genuine passion in her answer that touched something deep in Hakim's chest. From the bar, Robert watched the interaction with growing irritation. He couldn't understand the words exchanged, but body language was universal. The way Emily leaned in slightly to listen better, how her eyes shone with genuine interest, how she smiled in a way he had never seen in 3 years of work, all of it made his jaw clench with jealousy. Hakim, completely absorbed by the discovery, continued the conversation in Arabic, asking about her education, her interests, her life. Emily, initially nervous about neglecting her other tables, soon found herself engrossed in a discussion about classical Arabic literature, the nuances of Rumi's poetry and the cultural differences she had studied theoretically but never experienced in practice. Ana, mu'ajab jiddan bi ma'rifatiki, kaifa ta'allamti kul hada. I am very impressed with your knowledge. How did you learn all this? Hakim asked, genuinely curious about the journey that had led a woman from Los Angeles to master his native language. Emily hesitated for a moment before answering, aware that Robert was watching her with growing intensity. Ta'allamtu wahdi, fi al-layl ba'd al-amal. Al-thaqafa al-Arabiyya tajdhubni mundhu kunt sighra. I learned on my own, at night after work. Arab culture has attracted me since I was a child. The admiration in Hakim's eyes deepened. Here was a woman who, without resources or privilege, had dedicated herself to understanding his cultural heritage better than many who were born surrounded by it. There was a quiet strength in her determination, a dignity in her simplicity that touched him in an unexpected way. When Robert finally approached the table, his presence cut through the intimacy of their conversation like a cold blade. Emily, you have other tables waiting, he said in English, his voice heavy with a forced authority that made Hakim's eyebrows furrow slightly. Excuse me, Emily murmured to Hakim, automatically switching back to English. I need to attend to other customers, but I'd be happy to continue our conversation when I return. Hakim nodded with understanding, but his eyes remained fixed on Robert's tense face for a moment longer than necessary. There was something in the manager's possessive stance, in the way he positioned himself too close to Emily, that awakened a protective instinct in Hakim he hadn't expected to feel. As Emily moved away to attend to her other responsibilities, Hakim remained lost in thought, sipping the wine he had ordered without really tasting it. In just a few minutes of conversation, this extraordinary woman had challenged all his expectations of finding a genuine connection in a world that constantly disappointed him with its superficiality. The following nights at Jasmine took on a new dimension for Emily. Hakim returned on Friday, then on Saturday, always specifically requesting to be served by her, and with each encounter, their conversations deepened like roots, finding fertile soil. Robert watched this growing routine with a poorly disguised fury, his fists clenching involuntarily whenever he saw the mysterious customer delicately kiss Emily's hand upon leaving, a gesture of refined courtesy that she had learned to accept with natural elegance. On Monday, when Emily arrived for her afternoon shift, she found Robert waiting for her in the employee locker room. He was leaning against the metal lockers, arms crossed over his chest, a dark expression distorting his usually controlled features. "We need to talk," he said without preamble, his voice so tense it made Emily hesitate at the door, "about your conduct with that Arab client." Emily felt her stomach clench, but she kept her posture straight. "I don't know what you're talking about, Robert. I'm just doing my job. Your job," he took a step forward, invading her personal space, "is spending half an hour at a customer's table. Your job, speaking in that strange language nobody understands. Is that your job? Letting him kiss your hand like you're some kind of princess. Is that your job?" The anger in his voice made Emily instinctively retreat, but she forced herself to keep her tone calm. "He is polite and respectful. I talk to him because I speak Arabic, and he appreciates having someone he can speak to in his native language. I don't see a problem with that." "A problem?" Robert laughed, but the sound was devoid of any humor. "The problem is, you're acting like a high-class escort disguised as a waitress. You're giving hope to a man who obviously wants more than conversation, and that reflects badly on the restaurant." The words hit Emily like a slap. She felt the blood rush to her face, a mix of humiliation and outrage, making her heart pound. "How dare you imply that? I have never done anything inappropriate, never crossed any professional line. Then explain why he comes back every night just to see you. Explain why he leaves $500 tips when the bill is barely $100. Men like him don't do that. For polite conversation, Emily. They do it when they want to buy something." The deliberate cruelty of his words made Emily tremble with rage. "You have no right to talk to me like this. I've done nothing wrong, and I will not tolerate your disgusting insinuations." She tried to move past him, but Robert grabbed her arm, his grip tight enough to leave marks. "I'm not finished. This behavior stops now, do you understand? You will treat him like any other customer. No long conversations, no special smiles, none of this ridiculous intimacy you've created. Let go of me," Emily said through gritted teeth, trying to break free. "You don't own me, Robert. You can't control me like this." "Oh, I can. I'm your boss here, and if you don't like the rules, you can find another job. But as long as you work for me, you will behave appropriately." Emily managed to pull away with a sharp movement, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "This isn't about professionalism. This is about your sick jealousy. You never accepted that I'm not interested in you, so now you want to sabotage any chance of happiness I might have." Robert stepped back, as if he'd been punched, his face paling. For a moment, the mask of professional authority fell completely, revealing the desperate obsession that had been brewing for 3 years. "Happiness?" His voice came out as a harsh whisper. "You think that man is going to give you happiness? He'll have fun with you for a few weeks and then go back to his country, leaving you here with a ruined reputation and a broken heart. Is that what you want?" "What I want is none of your business," Emily replied, heading for the door. "And if you try to control me or humiliate me again, I'm going straight to corporate. I'm sure they won't like hearing that a manager is harassing his employees." That night, when Hakeem arrived for dinner, Emily was visibly tense, her smile too forced, her movements less fluid than usual. He noticed the change immediately, his attentive eyes catching the signs of distress she was trying to hide. "Ma al-khata, anti tabdina mutawidita." "What's wrong?" "You seem tense," he asked in Arabic as soon as she approached the table. His voice filled with genuine concern. Emily hesitated, glancing around quickly to make sure Robert wasn't nearby. "La shay muhim, faqat yawm saab." Nothing important, just a difficult day, she replied, but the sadness in her eyes betrayed her words. Hakim leaned forward, lowering his voice. هل هذا يتعلق بذلك الرجل الذي كان ينظر إليك بغضب? Does this have to do with that man who was looking at you with anger? His perceptiveness surprised her. Emily didn't know he had noticed the tension between her and Robert, but now she realized Hakim was far more observant than she had imagined. Wa mudiri wa huwa sabal ta'amul ma'ahu. He's my boss, and he's difficult to deal with. Hal yadayikuki? Does he bother you? The question was asked with an intensity that made Emily realize her answer mattered more than she could ever imagine. She nodded slowly, not trusting her voice to maintain composure in Arabic. Hakim studied her face for a long moment, and she could see something darken in his grey-green eyes, a calculated coldness that contrasted dramatically with the kindness he had always shown. Uridu an arifa ismaki al-kamil. I want to know your full name, he said softly. Wa uridu an arifa kul shay anka, and I want to know everything about you. Limada? Why? Emily asked, feeling a mix of fear and anticipation. Liani uhibuki, Emily. Liani la statinu anatakayala hayati bidunaki. Because I love you, Emily. Because I can't imagine my life without you. The words struck her like a bolt of lightning, making her grab the table to keep from stumbling. No one had ever declared their love for her with such intensity, with such absolute certainty. The world around her seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them in a bubble of impossible intimacy. Hakim, she began, but he gently raised his hand. La tujabi al-an. Arid faqatan ta'lami annama ash'uruhu haqiqi wa amik. Don't answer now. I just want you to know that what I feel is real and deep. Wa idha kana akhrun yadayikuki, fasa'atakafalu bidhalik. And if someone is bothering you, I will take care of it. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something in the way he said those last words, a promise that carried the weight of real consequences. La turid an taf'al shay'an mutahayiran. No, you don't want to do anything rash. Li'ani la astatinu an ara'aki ta'anin. Because I can't stand to see you suffer, he answered simply, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. At that moment, Robert appeared beside the table, his face a mask of forced professionalism that couldn't completely hide the fury in his eyes. Emily, I need you to come with me now. We have a situation in the kitchen. Emily knew it was a lie, but she also knew she had no choice. She stood up slowly, avoiding Hakim's gaze. Madira, Sa'ud Kariban. Excuse me, I'll be back soon. Hakim nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on Robert's face with an intensity that made the manager involuntarily look away. As they walked away, Hakim took out his phone and dialed a number that few in the world possessed. Ahmad, I need information on someone. An American named Robert Miller, manager of the Jasmine restaurant in Beverly Hills. I want everything. Financial history, criminal record, personal life, and I want it by tomorrow. The voice on the other end of the line responded in Arabic. It will be done, Your Highness. Hakim hung up and finished his wine slowly, planning every move of his next play. Robert Miller didn't know who he was dealing with, but he was about to find out that some men possessed resources that transcended borders and local laws. The next morning, Emily woke with a strange feeling that something fundamental had changed in her life. Hakim's words echoed in her mind like a persistent melody, and she found herself unconsciously touching her lips where he had pressed a gentle kiss upon saying goodbye the night before. His declaration had been unexpected, overwhelming, and now she struggled to process the intensity of the feelings it had awakened in her. Preparing for another day at the restaurant, Emily couldn't imagine that. At that very moment, Robert was sitting at his desk, reading a file that had arrived by email during the night. His face grew progressively paler as he absorbed the information about the man he had become obsessed with destroying. Hakim al-Rashid was not just a wealthy Arab businessman. He was a member of the royal family of the United Arab Emirates, heir to a fortune estimated at over $15 billion, and controller of companies operating in 43 different countries. Robert felt his hands trembling as he read about Hakim's investments in the United States, deals that involved figures his mind could barely comprehend. The restaurant's phone rang, interrupting his disturbed reading. "Jasmine," Robert speaking, he answered with an automatically professional voice. "Mr. Miller, this is Marcus Thorne, from the law firm Thorne & Associates. I represent the business interests of Sheikh Hakim al-Rashid in the United States. I would like to schedule a private conversation with you this afternoon." Robert felt the blood freeze in his veins. I don't understand. What would this conversation be about? About your professional conduct regarding a specific employee? Let's just say my client is interested in resolving certain issues in a civilized manner before considering more definitive measures. The line went silent for a few seconds before Robert could speak. "May I ask what kind of measures? I believe it would be more productive to discuss this in person. I will be there at 3 this afternoon. I ask that you arrange your schedule to receive me without interruption." The call ended, leaving Robert staring at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. His hands were sweating as he tried to process the magnitude of the situation he had gotten himself into. It wasn't just a rich client protecting Emily. It was someone with the power to destroy his life with a single phone call. When Emily arrived for her afternoon shift, she found Robert completely transformed. The possessive arrogance had been replaced by a nervous tension that made him avoid her gaze. He muttered vague instructions about the tables she should attend to and disappeared into his office, leaving her confused by the radical change in his behavior. At 3 o'clock sharp, Marcus Thorne arrived at the restaurant. He was a man in his 50s, impeccably dressed, with a presence that commanded instant respect. Robert received him in his office with trembling hands, trying to maintain some professional dignity. "Mr. Miller," Marcus began without preamble, "my client has informed me of certain irregularities in your conduct as a manager. Specifically, workplace harassment and attempts at improper control over an employee named Emily Hayes." Robert tried to protest, but Marcus held up a hand to silence him. "Before you deny it, I must inform you that we have evidence. My client is very meticulous in his observations and personally witnessed your inappropriate behavior. Furthermore, we have reports from other employees about your questionable conduct. I mean, there may have been misunderstandings, but I never harassed anyone," Robert stammered, his voice losing strength with each word. Marcus opened his briefcase and removed a series of documents. "Emily Hayes will be promoted to a position in one of Sheikh al-Rashid's companies. She will receive a full scholarship to finish her studies, along with a salary that will allow her complete independence. Her resignation from this restaurant will be effective as of tomorrow." Robert felt the floor give way beneath him. "You can't just take my employee like that. There are contracts, there are labor laws, there are also laws against workplace harassment," Marcus replied coldly. "And my client possesses considerable resources to ensure those laws are rigorously enforced if necessary. However, he prefers to resolve the situation more elegantly." He pushed another document across the table. "This is a non-contact agreement. You agree to have no contact whatsoever with Emily Hayes, directly or indirectly. In return, there will be no investigation into your past conduct or legal consequences for your actions." Robert read the document with growing desperation. Each clause was more restrictive than the last, effectively banning him from Emily's life forever. "And if I refuse to sign, Marcus smiled, but the gesture didn't reach his eyes. Sheikh al-Rashid has considerable influence in the American hospitality sector. It would be a shame if you found it impossible to get a job in any respectable establishment in Los Angeles, or if certain issues related to your income tax returns from the past few years were revisited by the relevant authorities. The veiled threat made Robert realize he had no options. He signed the document with trembling hands, feeling as if he was signing his own emotional death warrant. Meanwhile, in the main dining room, Emily was waiting. On her tables, unaware that her life was being completely reorganized just a few feet away. When Hakim arrived for dinner, she greeted him with a smile that carried a new dimension of awareness about her own feelings. Kaif kana yamuki? How was your day? He asked in Arabic, studying her face with his characteristic attention. Garib Kalilan, Roberto Kana, Mukhtalia fan al-Yaum. A little strange. Robert was different today, she replied, puzzled by the change in her boss's behavior. Hakim nodded, as if he expected this answer. Yasmin uridu an uhadithaki an mustaqbaliki. Emily, I want to talk about your future. Before she could answer, Marcus Thorne approached the table. Excuse me, Ms. Hayes. I'm Marcus Thorne, and I have a proposal that I believe you'll find very interesting. Emily looked confusedly between Marcus and Hakim, trying to understand the connection between them. Hakim gestured for her to sit, and Marcus began to explain the job opportunity, the paid tuition, the chance for a completely new life. I don't understand, Emily said slowly. Why would someone I don't know offer me all these opportunities? Hakim gently took her hand across the table. Li'ani uridhuki an takuni hura. Li'ani uridhuki an tasuli alama tastahikinahu. Because I want you to be free, because I want you to have what you deserve. Emily felt tears burn her eyes. The generosity of the offer was overwhelming, but she also realized the implications. Wa madha turid minni bi al-muqabil. And what do you want from me in return? La shay illa an takuni sa'ida. Nothing but for you to be happy, Hakim answered with absolute sincerity. Wa idha ikhtarti an takuni ma'i, fasa'akunu ar-rajul al-asad fi al-alam. And if you choose to be with me, I will be the happiest man in the world. Marcus discreetly stepped away, leaving them alone to process the magnitude of the moment. Emily looked into Hakim's eyes and saw something she had never seen before: unconditional love, absolute respect, and the promise of a future she had never dared to dream of. Hal hada hakiki? Is this real? She whispered. Aktharu al-ashya hakikatan fi hayati. The most real thing in my life, he replied, lifting her hand to his lips for a tender kiss that sealed a promise that would change them both forever. 6 months later, Emily walked through the mirrored corridors of the Al-Rashid International Office in Century City, her new reality still feeling like an impossible dream that could shatter at any moment. As the company's cultural relations coordinator, she had found not just a job that valued her linguistic skills, but a calling she had never imagined existed. Her responsibilities included facilitating communication between Arab investors and American partners, translating complex contracts, and organizing cultural events that brought two seemingly distinct worlds closer. The transformation in her life had been radical and overwhelming. The modest apartment in East LA had been replaced by an elegant flat in Beverly Hills, her university studies fully funded, and a bank account that for the first time allowed her to breathe without the constant weight of financial survival. But it was the emotional transformation that impressed her most deeply. For the first time in her adult life, Emily felt truly free to be who she was, without masks or compromises that diminished her essence. Her relationship with Hakim had evolved with an intensity that surprised her daily. They had dinner together every night, explored Los Angeles like two tourists discovering a new city, and spent entire weekends talking about literature, politics, dreams, and fears. Hakim had revealed himself to be a man of infinite layers, tender and protective, but also vulnerable in ways that contrasted with his public image of absolute power. He spoke of the pressure of carrying the legacy of generations, the loneliness of never knowing if he was loved for himself or for his position, the constant fear that Emily would see the disparity between their worlds and decide it wasn't worth it. On this particular afternoon, Emily was organizing documents for the most important meeting since she had taken the job, the final presentation of a renewable energy project that would bring a $2 billion investment to the US. It was the deal that officially justified Hakim's extended presence in the country, but they both knew the real reason he remained was her. Her phone rang, interrupting her concentration. The name on the screen made her heart momentarily race. It was Robert. For 6 months, he had strictly respected the non-contact agreement, but his call now could only mean trouble. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Emily, please don't hang up. I know I shouldn't be calling, but I need to warn you about something important." Robert's voice sounded different, stripped of the possessive arrogance she remembered, now filled with genuine urgency, and something that sounded like regret. "Robert, you know you can't contact me. If Hakim finds out, it's about him I need to talk. Emily, you're in danger. There are things about this man you don't know, things I found out when I tried to investigate him." Emily felt a mix of irritation and curiosity. What kind of things? He's not just a rich businessman. He's a sheik, Emily, legitimate Arab royalty, with connections that go far beyond what you can imagine. And he has a complicated past. Arranged marriages he broke off, scandals hushed up by his family's influence, business deals involving dangerous people. "You're making this up out of jealousy," Emily retorted, but a seed of doubt had been planted. "Hakim has always been honest with me." "Honest? Did he tell you about the fiancée waiting for him in the Emirates? About the marriage contract that was signed when he was 15? About the pressure from his family for him to end this American adventure and assume his royal duties?" The words hit Emily like cold daggers. "You're lying." "I have the documents, Emily. Photos from Arab newspapers, marriage contracts, family correspondence. I can send you everything. This man used you, turned you into a convenient mistress while he's here, but when he goes back home..." Emily hung up the phone with trembling hands, but the poison of Robert's words had already spread through her conscience. She tried to focus on her work, but every document she touched seemed to confirm the suspicions she didn't want to entertain. Hakim had spoken about his family, about pressures and expectations, but always vaguely, never mentioning specific commitments or marital obligations. When Hakim arrived at the office late that afternoon, he found Emily visibly upset, her eyes red with unshed tears. He approached immediately, his genuine concern evident in his expression. "Ma al-Kata, Habibti." "What's wrong, my love?" he asked in Arabic, trying to touch her, but she instinctively pulled away. "I need you to be completely honest with me," Emily said in English, her voice trembling but determined. "Are there things about your life in the Emirates that you haven't told me?" Hakim froze completely, and for the first time since they had met, Emily saw genuine fear in his eyes. "Who spoke to you?" "Robert called me. He said you have family commitments, a fiancé waiting, agreements you need to honor when you go back home." The silence that followed was deafening. Hakim ran his hands through his hair, his features contorting in a visible internal struggle. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of carefully guarded secrets. "It's true there are expectations. There is a marriage agreement that was made when I was a teenager, with an important politically allied family. But Emily, For weeks, I have been working to dissolve it, to sever all ties that would force me into a marriage I do not want. Why didn't you tell me before? The tears finally escaped, running freely down her cheeks. Why did you let me find out this way? Because I was afraid, he admitted, his own voice breaking. Afraid you would run away before I could fix everything. Afraid of losing you when I had finally found the person I love more than my own life. Hakim knelt before her chair, taking her hands in his. Emily, I have renounced everything. My position in the line of succession, the family businesses, everything that defined me before I met you. I chose you, I chose love, I chose a life we build together, and your family accepts this, she asked, still fighting the pain of the discovery. They are furious. They gave me an ultimatum: return and fulfill my obligations or be completely disinherited. I chose to be disinherited. Emily looked into his eyes and saw the absolute truth, the immense sacrifice he had made for love. You gave up everything. For me. For us, he corrected gently. Because I discovered that all the power in the world is worthless if I don't have you to share it with. She stood up slowly, still processing the magnitude of what he had sacrificed. And now, what happens to us? Hakim stood up as well, pulling a small velvet box from his blazer pocket. Now I ask you if you want to build a new life with me. A life where we are just Hakim and Emily, two people who love each other against all odds. When he opened the box, revealing a diamond ring that reflected the office light like captured stars, Emily felt her heart stop. Hakim. Tazawajini, Emily. Kuni zawjati wa sharikati fi kul shay. Marry me, Emily. Be my wife and my partner in everything. She looked at the man who had transformed her life, who had renounced an empire for love, who saw her not as a conquest, but as an equal. Yes, she whispered in Arabic. Nayam, uridu and akuna zawjataka. As he slid the ring onto her finger, Emily knew she had found not just love, but her own strength. She was a woman who had come from East LA to capture the heart of a prince, not through a fairy tale, but through her own intelligence, determination, and courage to love without fear. 2 years later, in an intimate ceremony that blended American and Arab traditions, Emily Hayes became Emily al-Rashid, not a fairy tale princess, but a woman who had chosen to build her own kingdom based on true love, mutual respect, and the courage to challenge entire worlds for the right to be happy. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story with a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.